Good evening and welcome to the webinar. My name's Steve Goody and thanks for joining us promptly at 7:30 this evening for the start. Stoked to have everybody on board and stoked to have you here for the start of a four-part webinar series and my first webinar this year. Fair to say this year in property investing has already shaped up to be massively different to last year, and I'm really excited about it. There's some cool stuff happening. Finally, some really decent positivity for real estate investors, property investors all around New Zealand. And I'm going to point out tonight where I see that being. Now, obviously, I have to bang a disclaimer on that. So I'm going to. Information provided is not financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor, accountant, or alike. Information is purely from my own due diligence, my own expressions, my own thoughts. My opinions are based on my personal experience and the way that I do business and transact. Now, having said that, I need that disclaimer tonight because I'm actually going to pitch some not out there thoughts, but I'm going to tell you where I think the rest of the year is going to go. I get asked to polish up the crystal ball on many occasions and actually state my claim and say with definitive action what I think is actually going to happen in the real estate market. And this evening, I'm going to tell you exactly what I think is going to happen over the next 12 months and where the big moves are going to be. Now, I started writing this webinar about a week ago, and I dove deep into the stats and the facts, and I found some really, really interesting stuff. Firstly, though, what I'll just say is that I'm going to explain first how just one house could be a lot better investment for you than New Zealand superannuation. Now, I know there's probably a lot of people online tonight who are not at all worried about their retirement or not at all worried about how far away it is. But I'm 52 and I've started thinking about it because I don't want to work all my life. I don't really have to anymore. I've done quite well for myself out of property and real estate. Having said that, I wish I did more earlier like most people do. So let me explain how this works for you. Now, this is what the New Zealand superannuation looks like currently in this week's dollars and in this, in the money that we have right now, weekly or fortnightly, paid into your account. If you are single or living with a dependent child, it's either $600 or a little over $1,000 a fortnight. Can you imagine living on $607 per week where you live? What's it cost to rent a two-bedroom property where you live? That's not a lot of money. If you're single and living with somebody who's not your partner, $558 or $959 a fortnight, even less. If you're a couple, it's $923 per week for two people. Now, that's not just rent, that's your entire living cost that the New Zealand superannuation is going to give you. So that's, in essence, the actual baseline. Now, I know most people are going to sit there and go, I've got KiwiSaver. Great. Absolutely fantastic. Love that for you. I think KiwiSaver is brilliant. And I applaud anybody that can save money that way. But it's by no means bulletproof as is anything. And you can end in your retirement and start your retirement when the share market has crashed or, there's risks to everything. And so I choose to take the New Zealand superannuation, have property investments and have KiwiSaver and some shares of my own. So I've got 4 different things. Now, I think that's by far the safer way. I obviously put most of my investment into property and real estate, and that's what I love the most. Now, right. So, why is property a great investment in a wealth building tool? Now, before I rip hardcore into this, please look to I think it's probably the right-hand side of your screen. There's actually a questions and answers sort of space there. If you have any questions on anything I've talked about tonight or am talking about tonight, and you want to ask that directly of me, bang it into the questions section on the right-hand side there. See everybody put in where they come from, all that sort of stuff. That's great. I'll ask for questions later, obviously, as well. But that's where you do it if that's what you want to do. Cool, excellent. Alrighty. So where were we? Why property is a great investment and a wealth building tool? Now, obviously, I like the wealth building tool side of it because property tends to hedge inflation very, very well because inflation inflates prices, and the highest fixed price cost that we have in this world realistically is accommodation or real estate. So when there is big inflation, it usually pushes house prices up. For instance, here's one I cooked earlier. This is one of the examples I use quite often, and I love this example because it's a really good income-producing asset that I own, but also I like it because of how long I've owned it. Now, I bought this, which is a single-bay villa, obviously 36 Waipapa Road in Haitaitai, just down the road here in Wellington, just out the window there. And I purchased this property quite some time ago. I had a lot more hair then, and I purchased it for a fairly good price. It's now worth about 1.41 million on homes.co, depending on how much credence you give homes. I don't particularly. I think it's worth probably a little bit more than that in the condition that it's in. So here we are with a graph there, and you can see right on the right-hand side of that graph, this is it being worth 1.41 million. Now, if you go to the complete left-hand side of the graph, you can see what it was worth just about exactly 3 years ago. At the absolute peak of the market, it was worth $2.32 million. Now, that is all big numbers and lovely stuff, but what really matters is how much did I pay for this property? That's the really comparative point, right? Well, I paid $525,000 for the property, but I paid for it on the 30th September 2005, which means that I've owned this property for nearly 20 years now, nearly exactly 20 years. Now, I paid $525 for this property then and did a big renovation on it. I turned the upstairs into a 5-bedroom student accommodation, boarding house, whatever you want to call it, and the downstairs into a really nice 2-bedroom accommodation as well. I also rent out the garage. So if we go back to that $1.4 million homes valuation, assume that it is worth $1.4 million. In 20 years, this property has nearly tripled in value at its lowest point of value, because obviously it was worth $2.3 million at the actual peak of the market. That's not too bad. That's a really good hedge on inflation. So this essentially means that I've paid a lot of debt off on this property over the last 20 years. I'll probably not live long enough to see this property pay itself down completely to zero. But what this property does do is it pays me enough cash flow every week to make me want to keep the property and not sell it and pay off other mortgages with it. So how much does it make? Well, this property pays me right now, before I retire, more than the New Zealand superannuation pays. This property is more cash flow positive right now than the New Zealand superannuation would pay me. It's getting 18.6% gross return as a percentage against the purchase price that I paid. So the upstairs flat is getting $1,260 per week. The downstairs flat is getting $620 per week. So combined, this one property, a couple more than one property, this one property pays me more than the New Zealand superannuation. But that doesn't mean that New Zealand super is particularly means tested, so I would probably still get the New Zealand superannuation plus this rental income coming in when I choose to retire. That's not too bad. So wouldn't everybody online tonight run out at some point and go and buy, where am I? There I am. Go out and buy 5 of these if you could, and if it was 20 years ago. Except that in 20 years' time, it will be 20 years ago, and we know this, right? We know that it's a good idea and that we should do it, but what stops us from doing it? Confidence and price in the market, all this type of stuff. I'm going to try and help you with that tonight a little bit. And my entire attention to tonight's webinar is this mindset thing. It's the biggest piece of real estate you'll play with, this bit between your ears, and having the confidence. Now, I thought that we were at the absolute bottom of the property market, and it has warmed up since then. And now the government is mucking around with what they call fiscal policy. Now, fiscal policy, of course, is when the government tries to play God and tries to impact what happens with you and me, everyday consumers. So they're trying to adjust the way that we spend our money. Now, the top way that they were trying to do that was the official cash rate. And the reason they were mucking around with the official cash rate is they wanted to cool down the property industry, and they did. They achieved that. The second thing they want to do is they want to get inflation under control. Now, they want inflation to be between, I think, 1.5 and 3%. It's at 2.2 and going down. So the government and therefore the Reserve Bank is very, very happy with the level of inflation. And that's why they're reducing and easing interest rates. That's why we saw an OCR drop this last week of 0.5. quite a healthy big drop, very expected. But once again, and I've said it on my Facebook page many times, the drop is one thing. The language they use around it is a whole different scenario. It's a whole different thing. And so the language this time we heard wasn't a language of taking the pedal off the gas and easing back. The language we heard was, we're going to reduce rates even further. And that's great because money became cheap. And when money becomes cheap, we investors go and spend it on more property, and property becomes more expensive. Property starts going back up again. And I love that. I really, really do. Now, the reason that money has become cheap is because the official cash rate moved. But before I get onto that, check out this. Bloody hard to see. It's very small. I apologize. But this is the rental statement for that one particular property. And when I say that I was getting, that income per week, this is a statement showing one room empty. I'm actually getting about $2,400 a week for that one particular property. And I've taken the tenants' names out and all that sort of stuff, but this is that property's rental statement. So I'm not fudging. I'm not mucking that around. It's well over $1,000 a week cash flow positive on the lending that I've got sitting there. And that's at about 5.8% interest rate, I believe, this particular property. So where's the point where we take advantage of this current property market? Because I feel like there's a heck of a lot of people out there that are kind of sitting on their hands, for use of a better word, and waiting for someone else to do something. And I know I've done it too. What happens is we as investors, I believe in, and fight me in the comments if you think I'm wrong, but we as investors, we wait until absolutely everybody is talking about property investment before we jump in. We don't want to be counter-cyclical. And I think that's a bit of a mistake because I've been prone in the past to saying that I think that this upcoming recovery will take forever, be ages long, and be a bit of a slow burn. And I'm going to show you some stats very, very shortly where I'm actually going to contradict that and state emphatically right now tonight that I think that it's going to actually be a little quicker than we initially thought it was going to be. I think it could take off, rocket off fairly briskly. And so I'm giving fair advantage to the market that I think that we should get stuck in a little bit right now. Cool. So why is that? Well, a lot of it is trying to figure out where we actually are in the property cycle. Now, I've borrowed this, liberally borrowed this of OPS Partners, and I'll pull it up a bit larger there. Obviously, this is the property clock. And at the very top, we've got high confidence, high money, lots of stuff going on, lots of cash. That's the very, very peak of the market. And that was, I don't know, how do you feel about calling it 2 years ago, maybe? A little bit more than 2 years ago. And then we had a slowdown. We had a slight oversupply in townhouses, and particularly, not really Christchurch, but certainly Wellington, Auckland, had a slowdown in oversupply in housing. We've, round at 3 o'clock, we've had slightly higher unemployment. That's been prevalent in the last few weeks. Everybody's seen slightly higher unemployment numbers. And then we got past the slowdown into the slump. And the slump's where developers are panicking about the land banking numbers they've got, how much dirt they've got. There's not as many consents going through. I think consents peaked at 75,000 a year and is back down to like 18 or 19,000. You got to remember, a consent doesn't equal a new property. A consent could just be a loo moving from there to there. So then we got to 6 o'clock around there. We'll call it no confidence buyer's market. It certainly definitely was a buyer's market very, very much, very recently. Then we go around to number 9, rising prices. Now, we haven't seen that yet. I don't think we're there yet. Find me in the comments. Tell me what time you think it is in the property cycle if you like. But I don't think we've gone right round to 9 o'clock yet. So we are somewhere between 6 and 9. Obviously, the way that we make the most money in property is owning as many pieces of real estate and having as many titles in our possession and our ownership between about 7 or 8 o'clock, right around to 12 o'clock. And just before 12 o'clock, we make the most money by selling it all then and buying it back when it's a slump, being counter-cyclical. Now, That's really, really hard to time. What's not hard to time is to realize that we are past the slowdown. If we're not past the slump, then we're well through it. And that now could be a really, really good time because houses are cheap. What do we use to buy houses? Money. Money is cheap at the moment as well. So let me show you what I mean by that. This is a graph of New Zealand house prices, right from 2005 right through to projections past 2025. And we can see the cycle. Now, we know that COVID and the amount of money that was printed in this country and the fact that we were overdue a boom before COVID. You remember COVID 2019, right? So you look at the dates on that presentation. 2019, we were well into a slump. We were well into a slump by 2019. We were due a boom. Now, the boom came quicker because of COVID. Everybody locked down. Everybody came home. Everybody did the stop, drop, and roll scenario. And then we had this massive boom. And that massive boom was extenuated, became one of the biggest booms in New Zealand property history because we not only had a natural boom, but we had an unnatural boom with our government printing hell of a lot of money. We know this. This thing boomed. And then 2021, late 22, right there, it all changed again. Cash became more expensive. Money came out. Yeah, I mean, I keep saying it on my Facebook page too, but in my hometown here of Wellington, at the very, very peak of that boom, there was 920 properties on the market. I remember a time when I was working with Sean Wood from Property Tutors in South Auckland, and he specifically targeted 4 or 5 suburbs. And he looked at it and went, if you take out the empty sections and you take out the mansions, the actual houses that investors want to buy, there's 92 of them. That was the early 2000s boom. Now in Wellington, there's not 920 properties on the market. There's 3,600 properties on the market. So if you look at that and go, cash is a lot cheaper, houses a lot cheaper, and we've got a lot bigger selection of houses to actually choose from, is now a great time to buy. Then you look at the fact that it has warmed up coming up into 2025. We're not in the positive territory yet, but it's very hard to move that ship. So if we're going downhill and we're in a slump and a negative, and we want it to come back to a recovery, it's got to stop being negative before it can become positive again. You've got to move that ship. And that's that property clock going round there past 6 o'clock. We're not at 6 anymore. We're through the slump. We're started to come back out of it statistically. And I think that's pretty cool. So then if you look at that red line, look at that statistic, look at that sort of average, now mentally overlay it with this, the official cash rate. That boom and bust pretty much tracks it. So the government's manufactured this. What's happened is they've brought interest rates down. Now, at the very, very bottom there, we had 2.95%, 2.75% available fixed for 5 years. Now, the people that grabbed that, and I told everybody to grab that. I couldn't see it going any lower than that. It really physically couldn't go any lower than the official cash rate of 2.95, 2.75. So a lot of people did grab that, and they are just coming out of that now. The people who grabbed the 3-year rate came out of it after 3 years, and their rate went back up to 7.5% because the government moved the rate back up to cool the property market. You can see that big jump at the very end. I'll bang my cursor over it right here. Peaked up right there, and they left it up there. And I don't think anybody online tonight will appreciate, will think that I'm a huge fan of the Reserve Bank or the current Reserve Bank governor. I've met him a couple of times. I'm sure he's incredibly smart and he's got a really tough job. But the job he has to do looks like a nail, and the only thing he's got is a hammer. He's only got one weapon, official cash rate, up, down. And he did too much to push it up, in my opinion. He left it up too long. And so therefore we must imagine he's going to overdo it on the way back down again. But there's a difference to you and me as investors when the official cash rate's going up. What happens when the official cash rate's going up? What happens when you've got a 5% mortgage, and if it comes out of 5, it goes to a floating rate of 7, or you can refix it at 6. You refix it as quick as possible. You don't go to the floating rate. You refix it as quick as you can. You take whatever rate you can get. Am I right? I'm right. I'm right. I'm right. I'm right. 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 So you don't do the same thing. And I didn't do the same thing. And investors don't do the same thing on the way down. Because what happens on the way down? What happens when you're fixed at 7.25, the floating rate's 8, and it was very recently, but the official cash rate is starting to come down. You come off your fixed rate and you go to floating, and we get a bit bloody greedy, don't we? Come on. You're sitting at home going, I don't want to admit it, but Steve's right again. As the official cash rate comes down, we go to floating. We don't refix it because we believe it's going to continue and keep coming down, right? So it came down a bit more. A couple of weeks ago, it came down another 0.5. And this graph is the result of that. And then we had some really interesting stuff come out, didn't we? Westpac came out with a sub 5, a 4.99 for 3 years. And a lot of people fixed at that. A lot of people grabbed at that. A lot of people could grab that because they were floating. They didn't have to wait to the expiry of their term because they were ready to go. And that's what Westpac banked on. Excuse the pun. Westpac went, people will grab this because they're floating and this is a great rate. They then pulled the plug on that last Friday, and most of the other banks have gone 4.99% fixed for 2 years. Now, I, like everybody else, was greedy and waited for my fixed term interest rates to end and left them on floating, which was expensive. It was costly. I have a lot of mortgages. Not a huge amount of them are massive, nothing really over $1 million, but accumulatively, there's quite a bit of lending there over quite a bit of real estate. And so I, as of yesterday, had $2.3 million that was floating at between 6.85 and 7%. Now, the question I get the most often is, Steve, what should I do with, and I can't tell you that because I'm not you and I don't have your experiences and your. I can only tell you what I'm doing. And what I did today with ASB and BNZ is I fixed $2.3 million of floating mortgages, and I fixed them for 2 years at 4.99%. So instead of paying $15,071 a month on that $2.3 million, as of next month, I'll be paying $12,207 on that $2.3 million of lending. Same income, much less cost. So I'm making nearly $3,000 a month more on the same portfolio. So I'm better off by $2,864 per month. Steve's happy smile. Now I have 5 more mortgages coming from fixed to floating in the next 2 months. And that got me to thinking, how many people are actually on a floating rate at the moment? And so I went and tried to find some stats on it, because this is the way that I use the numbers on my portfolio. This is a cash flow projection or a portfolio calculator. This is something I developed last few years. Obviously, what you can do is put in the name of the property, who owns it, how much you paid for it, how much the original lending was, how much the lending is now. And it's just a big complicated Excel spreadsheet. It's a bit sexy, to be fair. You can put in any size portfolio you like. I've got a good friend who's using this for his 200 houses, and he has 1 copy per bank. So he'll have all of his lending with BNZ, $20 million lending with Westpac, ASB, TSB, and it asks you how much of the rates, how much of the insurance, how much is the cost, the maintenance, the management, and it calculates what your gross and net cash flow is horizontally per property and vertically for the entire portfolio. It's actually quite a confronting thing to use some sort of spreadsheet like this to give you a global overview. And I love using this because you can put in all your valuations as well. It will tell you what your net worth is, and you can do it every 12 months and see if it's getting better or worse. Once again, really confronting. So I've used this as a fairly typical test case. What I've done here is I've put in 3 properties. The top one is a family home for my example of family. They owe $600,000 on a $1.2 million family home. Then I've got a rental property. It's a 2-bedroom. They paid $750,000. It's actually gone down in value. It's now only worth 700. It's a little bit upside down. The third property is a 4-bedroom student house that they paid some money for, paid some money off on, and they've got some equity in. I've also put in what the rents would be on the 2 rental properties. Obviously, no rent for the family home. I've put in a token idea of what the rates and the insurance are. And then I've taken overall an interest rate of 6.75%, which is what I was on with my portfolio last week, right? For a lot of my lending. Now, that would be negative cash flow by $1,800 per week. So even taking into account the rents that the 2 rental properties were getting and the fact that the owners are paying off their own property, it's costing them $1,800 per week. Now, what happens if they grab a really sharp deal across all 3 properties? Well, this is what happens. It goes down to $589 a week. That's if you pick up 3.65%. Then everybody jumps in the comments and yells at me and goes, nobody's doing 3.65%. Yet. Now, I'm going to give you the basis of my feelings that they're going to very, very soon. Now, exactly the same numbers, exactly the same rent, exactly the same everything, except the only thing we changed is we took the entire portfolio off the higher interest rate at 6.75, and we did the calculations at 3.65. Now, obviously, you can get 4.99 at the moment, so it would have come down a long way anyway. But in essence, at 7%, they're paying for their own house and they're paying off the rental properties as well. At 3.65, the rental properties are cash flow positive and helping them pay the family home off. Now, if this is an example of an everyday investor out there, and there's a couple hundred of them online tonight, you guys, right? And I'm an example with $2.3 million lending. What's the next thing to happen? That's always my thought process. So how many people are actually floating with a floating interest rate? So here's a really interesting article that I picked up. It was only beginning of the year. Of the $7.5 billion worth of brand new mortgages taken out in November, 3.5 billion were on a floating rate. So these are people that are buying brand new houses and they're not fixing because interest rates start to come down. This is from the Herald. I think it was the Herald article. Reserve Bank of New Zealand figures said that $3.5 billion worth of November's loan book have actually straight away on a floating rate. So 47%. So that's slightly less than half of the new mortgages being written every month are floating. Now, take into account too that around about 10% of the entire mortgage book of every bank comes up for a floating or a re-sign or a refixing every month. So I would say that something around 65 or 70% of all mortgages in New Zealand, all mortgage books with every bank, are at the moment floating. Now, when the interest rate's going up, you can't react very fast because people fix. When it's coming down, people leave it on floating. They can hit the fix button anytime they like and create that extra cash flow for themselves by fixing the mortgage and getting off that floating rate. I just found that, I don't know about you, but I find that really, really interesting. What does that mean, though, for us as property investors? What does it actually mean? What it means is that we can react faster, and we will. And so this market's going to turn and change very, very quickly. So let's look at this. The next announcements, 9th of April, 28th of May, 9th of June. There's 7 OCR announcements a year. We've just gone the longest gap that we have without having an OCR announcement. I believe that's why we had a 0.5 change. I, back in my mind, thought it could have been a 0.75, but it wasn't. That's all fine. That's fine. No problem. So now we get 3 of them in quick succession, April, May, June. This is what I reckon they will be. I think they'll reduce a 0.5 in April, a 2.5 in May, and a 2.5 in June, because we're at 3.75 at the moment, and the Reserve Bank said that by the end of the year, it'll probably be at 3%. They've actually pitched it themselves. So it's not so much crystal ball gazing as projecting when they will do it. I think the economy is actually bad enough for them to do the 0.5 again next. So I fixed mine because $2.3 million at a higher rate takes a lot of time to recover the interest paid if I wait a few months for it to come down. Plus, it's a gamble. I'm not very risky. I like surety, but that's my prediction of where it could be. So what will that mean to interest rates for you guys as retail investors? Well, I think by the end of the year, the OCR, as I said, will be 3%, which means that you should be able to fix for 3.65 to 4.25% for 1, 2, or 3 years by the end of the year. That's my prediction. It's a bit of a crystal ball gaze, don't get me wrong. Once again, love to hear what your thoughts are in the comments if you think I'm completely full of shit. But that's my reckoning. That's my thinking. I've read the official OCR Reserve Bank cash announcement. I've read all of, if not most of, the commentary by bank economists, and 80% say of people are backing this prediction or this result. So how does that impact not only you, but every property investor in the country? Well, let's think about it. What's the result of this? If 70 or 80% of the people are fixed and they get short of cash, but they can refix at a lower rate, creating better cash flow for themselves, like I have at nearly $3,000 a month. I've then got nearly $3,000 a month more of what my good friend at the mortgage supply company, David Windler, would call serviceability. What am I going to do with that serviceability? Well, I'm going to go to my mortgage broker and get a pre-approval, aren't I? Because the easiest way for me to create more cash flow at the moment is to buy some more houses at the bottom of the market when cash is cheap and plentiful. So the result of this is that I'm going to be better off by cash flow. So are you. So is every other property investor. So what happens next? Well, I'm sorry, but like house values start to go up. Clearance rates go up. People start paying more for houses. Open homes start to be a bit more crowded. And I think with the benefit of looking at these stats, that it actually happens quite quickly now. I don't think it's going to be the slow burn, as I mentioned earlier, that I thought it was going to be originally. So how do you feel comfortable? How do you secure your future knowing that one decent high-yielding cash flow property investment could match the New Zealand superannuation? So 3 puts you in the 1%, right? Puts you right up there. So how do you feel safe and protected and comfortable about investing at the bottom of the market and investing in property at the moment and getting it right? Not just fluking it, not just following the rest of the trend, but absolutely nailing it. And what is it that you actually want to add to your portfolio? Now, I've never been a huge fan of the regions. I'm just pissed off half the people on the webinar. Sorry about that, but I haven't. I think that most good investments in New Zealand are in main centres. I hate cash flow negative. I want my property investments to wash their own back straight away. And so I won't personally invest in anything smaller than Tauranga, Hamilton, Napier, Dunedin. I like Christchurch, like Wellington, like Auckland. Love Auckland, actually. I would buy more Auckland in a flash. I like the main centres. You do you. Everybody might find fantastic things, but I'm basing my crystal ball gazing tonight on 20, 30 years of property investing experience and what's best for the masses, okay? You might be an outlier. Go for it. Cool. Good on you. So this is what I think. Cash flow positive deals in the main centres. How do we make that more comfortable for you? Well, there's 3 things you need to know or need to feel comfortable about. You need to know where you are. And a lot of people with a portfolio of 1, even 2 properties don't know that. Most people with a portfolio of 10 properties haven't done a deep dive into their own property portfolio for quite some time and should do. And so I'm going to help you with that tonight with a couple of freebies and tools and stuff. You need to know what you can borrow. Now, sometimes that's a conversation with a mortgage broker, but often it's a paper and pen and a spreadsheet and figuring out a thing called your capacity, which is if I fix my mortgages and I've got $500, $1,000, $3,000 more serviceable income available to me, how much can I borrow with that serviceable or available income? Makes a lot of sense, right? This is what you want to know. Third thing you want to know is, what does a good deal actually look like? What constitutes a good cash flow deal in a main centre? Do we have some sort of analysis tool for that? Now, I've got all 3 of these things tonight. You've already seen the first one, but I'll walk through them again. This is my portfolio spreadsheet. I've never made this publicly available. I spent a lot of time and effort on it. The only thing it doesn't have is an amortization table. We get very, very close to nailing exactly all of the cash flow that we need from all of the properties. It's a very, very big and extensive spreadsheet. It goes for bloody miles. It's not complicated. If you've got Excel on a laptop or even a phone, you can put it in, plug it in, and get cash flow numbers. What I did is I designed it so that you could have as many properties in it as you like. If you've got 12 properties, you can have your portfolio of your 12 properties, and then you can have the property that you're analyzing and put that in there as a line on its own. And then you can look at generally the new property, does it add value to your existing portfolio? And you can go back and forth with that. So if you'd like, this evening, I can supply you with a copy of this portfolio spreadsheet. Second thing, we have worked pretty hard on this with the mortgage supply company, David Windler and his team. We've got what we call a capacity discussion tool. It's going to ask you all of the right questions to see what your cash flow is like. Because as we know, banks are ravenous for cash flow. And what it can do is it can show you what your current cash flow is and what your cash flow would be if you refixed your mortgages. Brilliant. It sorts out that problem I get 3 times a day when somebody says to me, should I fix for 6 months, 12 months, 24 months, 48 months? It gives you all of the likely cash flow outcomes given the interest rates that are available to you. And I've just given you an idea of where I think interest rates are going to go over the next few months. So what we've got is a portfolio spreadsheet. Where am I right now? Capacity discussion tool. What can I do with the resources that I either have now or will have when I refix my mortgages or when interest rates go down further, hopefully. And the third part is a project calculator, just a real simple tool where you could put in the purchase price, the costs, and it will spit out a profit margin at the bottom or a valuation at the bottom. And you can actually use a super simple tool on your computer, on your laptop, whatever, to give you an idea whether the project that you're looking to take on will actually work numbers-wise in reality at the very, very bottom of the spreadsheet. Now, I think these 3 tools constitute like nearly as good a news for property investors as the official cash rate going down. I'm sometimes accused of being overly optimistic or overly happy, but I've done pretty well over the last few years, and I only see positive things coming up in the next couple of years. I think now is a fantastic time, and these are the analysis tools that you'll need to be able to figure that out for yourself as well. Where are you right now? How much money can you borrow, or what can you do, and will it be profitable when you do it? So these are some baby steps to help people out, right? Now, obviously, I've got an event coming up at the end of March, 30th of March, and so I'm going to give these away to people to buy a ticket to that event because I think they're really useful, they're really great, and the people that come to my event, usually people who actually do something. They take the information that they've been given on a webinar like tonight, and they go out and actually buy some houses, do some things with it. So we've decided to call it Thrive in 25, the roadmap to property success, and you're going to need these 3 spreadsheets to start with because we're going to give you some homework. Obviously, we're going to do another 3 webinars, and they're going to be to do with those spreadsheets and using them to figure out where you are, what you can borrow, and what you can do with it. So that once we do the actual physical event in the room, everybody's absolutely geared up and manned up and knows exactly what they're doing and how they're going to do it. So the ultimate question for this evening is, did you like me better with the beard or without? No, I reckon I'll be like this. Nah, jokes. So the roadmap for property success. We are in the Grand Millennium Ballroom this year. We were in Eden Park previously, and we can't get that venue this year. It's not big enough for us at the moment. We usually get massive numbers. We've already done pre-sales for this event, and we've sold out of those pre-sales. We're actually getting very close to sold out on the VIP tickets as well. 30th of March in the Grand Ballroom. It's a full one-day event, and we've got some super special, secret, cool stuff to show you. We literally were really struggling in previous years to fit in all of the information we want to explain to you, and we have fit in one extra key speaker that we've never had before, which I will announce next week. Super special international guest speaker. Now, To fit that in, instead of starting at 9 o'clock, we're going to start at 8:45. We're going to go slightly longer at the other end of the day as well, because there's a lot of information to feed. We have totally updated the presentation for today's market, because 6 months ago, 12 months ago makes no resemblance to where the property market is now with the interest rates that are there now. We're going to show you all of the strategies and skills that we and our clients are using to secure massive cash flow deals right now. I posted a floor plan on the Facebook page today of one of them. It's a 20-bedroom boarding house, and the clients are looking at nearly 30% gross return on that. We're doing some pretty out there crazy cash flow stuff and setting people up, absolutely setting people up for life. I reckon we put on a really great event. So we're going to discuss how you can actually win in this market. We are not real estate agents. We won't sell you property. We don't recommend any one piece of real estate to you. We're not going to sit there and talk to you about new build townhouses that might not yield or return. We're going to talk to you about renovating and flipping and doing up and trading and getting cash flow positive properties that pay you every week, that don't cost you every week, because we want your ability to borrow to go up so you can buy more properties. And that's why we do a fairly long and detailed deep dive, and we do a fairly long and detailed program as well. But we'll talk about that briefly on the day. And the rest of it is, it's a boot camp. We want to teach you some stuff. We also do a really great investor panel. So we grab 5 or 6 of our most experienced investors who have done brilliantly in the last few months or years, and we get them to stand on stage with a microphone. You guys can bang questions at them. We love the thought of new properties investors and experienced property investors coming to this event from all around the country. And we get people from Invercargill, Christchurch, fly up to Auckland for this event every year. And we get people to come in and network, talk to each other, find new joint venture partners, learn new things together. This is why we do big round tables. So you're not sitting there trying to do notes on your knees. You've actually got a table in front of you. You're comfortable. You know, this is New Zealand's premier property investing event. We would do nothing less. And we bring in all of the guys that advise me on my portfolio and have done for the last 20 years, like David Windler, who's my mortgage specialist, and his guy in Wellington here, Carl Mann, who I was on the phone with 3 or 4 times today. Matthew Gilligan, who popped in tonight, but he's out fishing. How to figure out who's an experienced and decent property investor? Yeah, if he's out fishing midweek, he probably does pretty well. Matt Gilligan is great with tax entities and structures, and we will have both Dave Windler and Matt Gilligan on either the next or the next webinar after that as well. But I bring these experts into the room, and they tell you from their experience what they're seeing and how they're getting the money and how they're keeping the money intergenerationally over the years for your benefit as well. We'll get them live in the room for you to ask your questions to as well. And obviously, we really love the idea that people just network like hell. Bring a fistful of business cards for your business. Talk to people at other tables. And to facilitate that, we're putting on lunch for you as well. So you won't need to leave the hotel, go to some dodgy takeaway joint, hope they get you food, and then you run back to this event. We'll just put on all the sandwiches and stuff, and we'll get the lunch sorted out for you too, on us at the venue. Makes it so much easier. Now, obviously, the Grand Millennium Hotel is in Merrill Drive. There's parking all around there. It's not free. It's not even cheap, but it's worth it. Trust me. It's an investment. Let's go. Okay. And of course, as I mentioned previously, we've got a really inspiring international guest speaker that we've secured for this event. We don't do this always. We haven't done this for 10 years. We've scored a really great guy. I'm going to announce it on the same webinar that I'm doing tonight, but next week with David Windler. I'm going to tell you exactly who it is then. Fair to say, it's pretty bloody exciting, and I think it's going to be kind of a big deal. He is a superb speaker and an incredibly good international guest speaker and inspirational dude. Don't miss this. Trust me. This guy doesn't come to New Zealand for anybody else. And he hasn't been to the country, I don't think, for nearly a decade. You just don't get to hear from this guy at all. I don't want to overplay it, and I want to keep a bit of mystery, but this guy's really, really good. He will really push your buttons, make you really, really think about some stuff. Anyway, yeah, enough about that. So if you want to grab your tickets tonight, we've actually set up a really great special for you. Obviously, I love my webinar crew, and you guys have been amazing. So what you need to do is go to stevegoody.com/webinar promo, And Rowan, my lovely admin, has just put it in the comments there, so you just be able to click it from in the comments page over there. Make sure to put the event into your calendar. Come to the event, grab your tickets. There's a 25% discount link on there tonight for the first 10 purchases. Bear in mind, there's only 8 VIP tickets left at all. We had an early bird special and that sold out very, very quickly. And the next thing they want after the early bird special is all the VIP tickets, which is sitting right up the front. It's the tables with the chocolates on it, the tables that get all of the specials. And as a bonus for tonight's webinar, you will get a free copy before you come to the event of those 3 special things that I mentioned. Portfolio spreadsheet, you can figure out where your portfolio is right now and how it's performing and acting. A capacity discussion tool, so you can be able to go to your mortgage broker and be able to figure all of that out. And the project calculator, so you can figure out what's a good deal and what's not. And obviously, we're going to do a lot more work with those 3 spreadsheets over the next 3 presentations and rolling into the event itself as well. So, come as that special time where you get to ask me some questions, bang them into the comments there, and I'll go through as many of them as I possibly can. Before I do that, and while you're, bashing out your questions, great question, Rachel. Yes, anybody that's already bought a ticket will get those 3 bonuses as well. Make sure everybody gets them. We do have 3 more webinars to go. Next week's webinar, which you are automatically registered for because you registered for this one, and anybody else that's watching this recording can register and get the next one as well. As myself and Mr. David Windler, I'm actually sitting down with him for a beer tomorrow afternoon where he discusses presentation and what he's going to do. And he's just basically going to give you all the tips and tricks and demystifying and how to get finance, what a bank's looking for in serviceability right now, all that myriad of stuff. He's brilliant on this stuff. And that's the 5th of March, 7:30, live webinar, same background, same Steve, but with Dave Windler involved as well. So there's your steps. Go to stevegoody.com/webinar promo. Link is in the comments section there. You get a 25% discount. You get all of the bonuses and all of the spreadsheets and portfolio bits and pieces. And remember that when I started this webinar, maybe not now, but when I started it, there was only 8 VIP tickets left. So bash into them. All right. Questions. Sophia asks, anytime soon will you have one of these events in Christchurch? Probably not. These events cost an absolute massive amount of money to put on. They are very, very hard to put on. And realistically, finding a place that'll feed and sit 400 people for a day, not very easy. There's only 1 or 2 of them in Christchurch, so they're horrifically more expensive than most other things. All good. So Rachel's bought a ticket anyway, so that's all good. What other questions have we got? I really want to. I really, really want to be there, but I can't. I'll be out of the country. Oh no! Do you have the dates for the next one? Well, if we do a next one, and it's a big if sometimes, we'll possibly do that in October. We haven't firmed it up yet. Next big campus on. There we go. Excellent. Rachel says she already got a ticket. Yeah, you saw that one come through. Oh, jeepers. There's a few tickets coming through. Lots of people going to the website now and grabbing their tickets. Prediction for serviceability test rates, will they go much lower than 7%? Yeah, I think they will. I think they'll start to match the OCR. So test rate, in case you don't know, is the rate the bank uses of all of your debt to figure out whether you've got capacity to borrow more debt. So if you're doing an application with ANZ, but you've got a whole pile of BNZ mortgages, ANZ doesn't know what your BNZ interest rates are, so they'll just use the test rate. The test rate at the moment is around 7%, which can kind of hold people back because you might be paying 2% interest, but BNZ, the bank you're looking at considers it to be 7%. So that's their test rate. But the test rate was at 9% very recently, just before Christmas, around 9%, and it's come down strongly. So I do think it will come down below 7%. I would imagine that by Christmas it could be 6%, which is going to allow, once again, same as this floating interest rate thing, it's going to allow so many more investors to have more serviceability and more cash flow and get into the market, and therefore the market will rise and will rise more quickly than we expect. I think that could really start to move along. Yeah, very, very healthy move. Cool. Jeremy, thoughts on Queenstown's new developments? I've always been a bit cautious of Queenstown. It's previously it's always been like a tourist town. It's not necessarily the place where I would invest for cash flow. I'd invest there for capital gains. I think right now it's probably a pretty good time to invest there for capital gains. I think as the property market warms up and as property people, real estate people, international people generally have more money and more cash, it's Queenstown, Wanaka, Arrowtown that they'll probably flock to. I don't think it'll actually be too long before we start to see the Southern Lakes and Otago district be, one of the higher performing capital gain districts in the country again. It does happen quite often. Yeah. Warren, main piece of advice for new investor looking to buy their first investment property. I went through this recently. I went through it 30 years ago for myself, but I went through it more recently with my 20-year-old son when he bought his first piece of real estate. The hardest thing to do on your first piece of real estate is that first deposit. The second hardest thing is the second deposit. So I'm always specifically recommending that people buy properties that they can renovate and add value to, because once you've saved a $80, $90, $100, $150,000 deposit and you buy your first piece of real estate, you want that piece of real estate to go up in value so that you don't have to save a second deposit. You want to be able to push it so that it starts to go up. That saves you from having to borrow the second one. And of course, your first piece of real estate, you probably got an 80%, 20% mortgage, 80% bank, 20% deposit. The second one, you'll have 60-40. So it's harder with the second one as well. So add some value on the way in. A couple more tickets jumping through the roof. Thank you so much, guys, for joining us. Just having a quick look on my phone here, actually. Yikes. Orders come through. Greg Long's grabbed a ticket. Morris Williams grabbed himself a ticket. Brendan Ricketts. Marjorie grabbed 2 tickets. Fernando bought a VIP, one of the last few ones to go. Yahoo! Andrew Lums bought one. Great to see the guys. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Mitch, thoughts on where commercial property is at right now? Super regional. Really weird. Lots of empty space in Wellington. Quite sad. Auckland, very different. Very, not my place of expertise. I like residential. It's so transactional. It's way more liquid. I'm still of the thought that I wouldn't buy any commercial property that's worth, say, less than $5 million. I like the higher price stuff. I'm not there for fish and chip shops and retail. Hope that helps. Probably doesn't. My bad. Sorry, when does the new webinar? Will tickets still be available? Rachel, the next webinar is this time next week, Wednesday next week at 7:30, and they may still be available. It depends how many we sell tonight, because they are selling quite quickly. A couple will just come through now. We probably won't have VIP by next week. Grab your tickets now if you need to. And also, I push back on people who spruik my tickets. There's a lot of fakes out there. You can only buy them from that steve.co. Page, my Eventbrite page, and the way that I stop people from being able to fake the tickets or sell dodgy scam tickets is I'll give you a refund if you ask for a refund right up to the morning of the event. I'm not there to scam people. What other questions have we got? Katie, what about a Wellington seminar or a coffee chat? Probably won't do a Wellington seminar, but I'll definitely be doing a coffee chat. That can be found most mornings in prefab, like I was this morning. Quite often I'll post it on the Facebook page, and you're more than welcome to come and get stoked up on coffee with me. In the morning before I rip into it, I can walk there from my house. I love it. So good. Prefab's the best. Builder's current hourly rate. Geez, I don't know. I know what I pay for mine. It really depending. Certainly has come down a long way. A lot of builders out there wanting to get some work going. Let's be fair. Next webinar is next Wednesday. That's a really big question. Well, someone's looking at their first investment property and likes the idea of a new build with low maintenance. Do you have a firm standing on existing or new builds as investments? I don't particularly like new builds as cash flow investments. They don't tend to cash flow very well unless you're the builder, unless you're the developer. I've bought some new builds because Auntie Cindy said I should. Thanks, Matt, for buying your ticket, and also thanks Gene from Grab One as well. Yeah, I'm not a fan of new builds. Honestly, I like to add value. I mean, feel free to prove me wrong. I like developments. I like being the developer. Yeah. Can we rewatch this somewhere? Yes, I'll put it on my YouTube channel once I've compressed it a bit. And you'll see it pop up on the Facebook page, and there'll be a link across to it. Sarah. Yeah, and thanks for buying your ticket. Cindy asks, what are your thoughts on DTI rules? DTI rules is debt to income rules. It's another government intervention where they're trying to put a handbrake on property investment, which really isn't working at the moment because they don't need it at the moment, so they really haven't wound it up. And most people I've looked at, and I've looked at a lot of those portfolio spreadsheets over the last few years, most people don't have a problem with DTIs. They don't have an issue there. So, yeah, no big deal. Yeah, a few questions there about that. Do you see DTI starting to drop? They might drop as interest rates go lower. 7 times for investors. But the market's the market, and the government has to keep the property market going, and they will. So if DTIs and loan-to-value ratio restrictions and the official cash rate start to bite too hard, government's going to change them. They're just going to change them. They can't not have a property market. Bugger. Sorry, Kelly. The ticket site may have shut itself. There's a lot of people on there right now. I would say keep trying. If you don't have any success and would like me to help you out later on, message me on Facebook Messenger. I'm the only one that answers those questions. Jane just bought her ticket 30 seconds ago, and Matt bought his 2 minutes ago. So people are getting through. It's an Eventbrite thing. So keep trying. Tips on doing your first flip. Oof, boy, tricky. Do the numbers really carefully. Do them twice. Don't bullshit yourself. Big fan of doing your numbers from the top down, not from the bottom up. Don't under-recognize what everything's going to cost. OPS partners who do their wonderful podcast and lent me that property clock today. I actually did ask if I could steal/borrow that from those guys, and I'm good friends with them. They're good people. They have a podcast coming out probably towards the end of this week featuring me talking about flips and how to price them. Probably a good idea to jump over there and have a look at that. Katie, what do the tenants care most when you buy a rental that needs some TLC? Ask them. Really, they just want clean, safe, dry. But ask them. If they want a new dishwasher and they're willing to pay $40 a week rent more, then ask them what they want. Give it to them. They're your customers. Be awesome. So there we go. stevegoody.com/webinar promo. We have had a lot of ticket sales go through. They're still pumping through. There's a lot of people still on their Facebook page. Hit it hard. Get it stuck in there. I will leave the screen up for a little bit. I hope tonight has been really useful to you. What I'm really trying to do and trying to find and trying to create for you is a really obvious roadmap of where to go with your investing to make it comfortable, viable, safe, easy. So grab your ticket for the event, for God's sake, and come to the next webinar where we're going to talk about mortgage finance, ask all of the questions under the sun. And by the time you actually come to the physical events in Auckland on the 30th of March, you're going to be a long way ahead in your thinking. And I'll walk you through it. We'll babysit. Let's go. I hope you can see, like I can, that there's a really interesting boom coming and that we all want to be part of it. Excellent. Well, thanks so much, everybody. And thanks for Rome, my PA, who's been helping in the background. Hope today's information is really interesting. If you're watching the replay, then grab your tickets. Website's the same. 25% off. You get all those bonuses. And I'll see you next week on the finance webinar with Mr. Dave Whittler. Have a great night.